news from around the world. I'd like to welcome Sean Muzzy as my co-anchor today. Sean is CEO of Neo Ogilvy, North America, and keynote speaker of the Mobile Media Summit in San Francisco. Sean, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Karen. Really excited to be in polar vortex-free San Francisco for the summit today.
In typical, this is the year of mobile fashion, 2014 kicked off with some big news across the industry.
That's right, Karen. We've already seen major headlines about acquisitions, CES, pop culture, new apps, current events. In fact, Uber has announced this last week its latest venture, specifically for its Colorado audience. The new app, Duber, will now seamlessly connect smokers with dealers, making marijuana more accessible for everyone. Did you hear that? Fast food companies start optimizing your mobile strategy today.
I like it. All right, so according to a report on Pop Dust, Taylor Swift is rumored to be dating the founder of Snapchat. Sadly, though, the rumor can't be confirmed since all the photos of the couple vanished after 6 seconds. Work with me, guys.
And in other news, Southwest Airlines has been fielding tons of complaints after 2 of their airplanes landed at the wrong destinations last week. Said a 22-year-old media planner, "I don't know anything about the airline industry, but why didn't they just email the air trafficker and swap the landing destinations on the back end?"
So Google made progress last Monday in efforts to control devices in the home via smartphone. They announced their acquisition of Nest Labs, a company that builds internet-connected thermostats and smoke detectors. I am so looking forward to seeing a 30-second pre-roll every time I leave my house.
And finally, at CES, wearable tech was one of the main attractions, with manufacturers attempting to create more fashionable designs. Wearable tech is going to be huge in 2014 because everyone knows that the most fashionable person in the office works in the IT department.
Hey Sean, thank you again for coming. That was pretty funny. Hashtag LOL. Welcome everyone, and thank you for coming. I just want to say a few words before we get started. This wouldn't be possible without all of our sponsors, all of you, and our speakers and my team. So if you would give please a big round of applause. Thank you guys very much. Thank you. You are amazing. This is the ADD of conferences every 30 minutes. So to kick us off, I want to introduce to the stage Delo from Ad Age. Cotton, come on up.
Hello, everybody. So Sean, it's no secret that mobile usage is skyrocketing, but at what point do you think mobile ad budgets might start to catch up, and what might push that to happen?
Yeah, so I think there's obviously a lot happening. If you look at some of the spend estimates, I think mobile is on a path to surpass desktop in the next couple of years. But really, what's really driving a lot of the investment now is happening in social, and obviously what's happening if you look at Facebook and the level of investments that are happening and the revenue they're making on mobile. That's clearly one of the big things that's happening. I think what's going to move more money there, one of the biggest growth areas in mobile are richer formats. And as smartphone adoption expands further, you're going to see mobile video is actually one of the big risers because as a content source, more publishers are pushing out mobile video. And in terms of mobile media spend over the next year or more, I think mobile is outpacing the rest of the format types. That's a big push as well. Of course, as publishers shift to more native ad units, I think we're going to see more spend go in as well.
So you mentioned Facebook. It seems like they're really killing it with mobile these days. Their ad revenue is nearly almost 50% from mobile as of last quarter, and up from nothing a year and a half ago. What do you think other publishers could learn from Facebook potentially?
Yeah, I think there's a lot. I think you're already starting to see shifts happening where publishers are adopting more of a feed or stream style to traditional content. I think we're going to start to see the desktop web page formats start to drift away, and I think that's where a lot of growth is going to come. And in doing that, you're going to have more in-stream ad units. I think we're already seeing, whether it's the BuzzFeeds and other types of companies creating more units that are native to devices as well. So I think that's one big thing. And then, so companies like Twitter are following suit with that as well. Obviously, they made a MoPub acquisition. LinkedIn's another one as well. I think that they have that potential that's already there. But you're going to see traditional publishers do the same thing, and they're already starting to do it. And then I think the other piece with it is really location-based as well, which obviously there's a lot of companies, the sponsors here, that have done a lot in that area. But I think that's another thing that you can do within within Facebook and other social platforms.
So what are some of the best use cases you've seen for location-based targeting?
Yeah, so I think there's plenty of ways to do it. I think what we've seen happen in terms of investment from marketers in mobile, that was an easy one, is location, right? It started really a couple of years ago with mobile search and Google and being able to do things like bid by distance and really hyper-target local users. And now you're able to do the same thing, obviously, with a lot of companies like XAD and PlaceIQ and Millennial and so on. And I think a lot of the use cases that we've seen that have been successful is where we're using location as a context for either purchase or for things like conquesting. We've had some use cases where for a couple of entertainment brands where we've used location targeting to reach potential consumers in competitive locations, and then proven that we've been able to drive traffic to our own locations. So I think that's obviously a really big use case.
And how did you go about proving that?
Yeah, so working with a partner in the space, we were able to identify people that saw the advertisers and essentially a holdout cell where we had people that were seeing ads for the advertiser. And then there was a group that we know saw the ad, but we served them, we were able to see the ad, we served them something different. And in one case, we actually saw a 700% plus lift in traffic being driven.
So looking forward, pie in the sky, what do you hope location-based targeting can become, in a year or two?
Yeah, well, I think we're really just at the tip of the iceberg on it. I think what's going to start to change is the technology itself, and you've already started to see that with the introduction of the iBeacon. But a lot of the companies that are in that space, Qualcomm being one, is doing a lot of investment in R&D around LTE direct. And I think as that technology starts to adapt over the next 2 to 3 years, probably more in the 3-year period, you're going to start to see retailers or locations connecting and communicating with potential customers using that technology. I think that's one thing.
What's LTE Direct?
LTE Direct is essentially similar to the beacon technology, but it's contextual awareness that's going to be built into your phone, and it's going to allow another device within a radius of your device to read the data that's on your phone or device. And I think what that's going to help is to understand the journey that you've been on as a customer, and there's definitely non-advertising implications of that as well. But for advertising, I think there's definitely a lot of promise with that.
And what do you think a marketer needs to be cognizant of in terms of privacy when they're considering using a technology like that?
Yeah, I think that's obviously a big question, and we've seen the debate from an online perspective over the past however many years. I think the big thing there is making sure that opt-in protocols are in place. Many of we've seen with applications, you need to request you have to allow and enable applications to collect certain types of data, particularly location is one of them. So I think like we've seen with behavioral targeting, obviously early days of doing things like retargeting, everybody was against tracking, and now I think people are still against a lot of it, right? But I think no one would disagree that it's made for better, getting served better products. So I think it's kind of balancing privacy with the opportunity for creating a better experience.
And what about the mobile banner ad? It's very much maligned in some quarters. Do you think it'll ever become extinct?
Well, I don't think it will ever come mixed things. I think one of the most interesting things that we've seen happen over the past 18 months is we saw actually Q1 last year, the desktop ads that we bought were being served mobily at a tremendous rate, right? So I think what we saw was over 1,000% lift in the impressions that we were buying that were being displayed mobily. And so I think what that's saying is, the mobile ad is happening. It's on the phone, it's on a tablet. I do think, as we were talking about early on, that shift towards the streaming content or newsfeed style is going to change that. So as publishers make that shift, I think you're going to see the introduction of new units, and so the banner ad will change, but I don't think it's going away anytime soon.
How can a marketer make a mobile banner ad effective? Who is it effective for? What are the right cases?
Yeah, I think it's definitely, and I'm sure we're going to hear that come up a lot today in the other panels. I think it's all about understanding the context of the user and what they're doing at that moment in time. So if you're in the social context, if you're in an application, I think let's not forget that mobile as an industry, still the majority of the money that's being made in mobile is not ad-related, right? So many of the companies that are particularly in the gaming categories, if you look at companies like Candy Crush, who are pulling in wherever report you see $600,000 to $900,000 a day, people buying moves. I think that's where most of the money is. But how can advertisers make it effective? It's understanding where that user is in the journey and making sure that your ads are complementing, that you're engaging them in the right way.
And then what are the main pain points still with mobile advertising?
Yeah, so I think what's interesting, and it's sort of a pain point but an opportunity, is really the increase in cross-device behavior that's happening. I think when you and I talked prepping for this, we talked a lot about how if you just look at the buying experience that everybody in this room goes through when they're buying a product, if you were, a couple of years ago, you were searching and buying online, or you were shopping online and go buying retail. Now, because of the number of devices that people have in the household, I think last year I read a stat that the average U.S. household has 5 internet-connected devices. So that sort of cross-device experience is a big challenge for advertisers, for marketers who are used to dealing or promoting their products or engaging their customers in a much more linear world. That was the online advertising.
And what about measurement? What hurdles are there still to?
Yeah, I think that's the big hurdle. I think, and that's going to be an area that you're going to see a lot of development in. Again, I think some of the companies I mentioned earlier, also companies like Drawbridge, TapAd, are doing a lot of device mapping that'll help us understand a little bit more about that customer's experience that they're having with our brands. But I think that's the biggest challenge right now. We saw actually an interesting stat where, for one of our clients, we actually noticed a drop-off on their online sales. And what we uncovered was it was because people started to use more click-to-call functionality in search. And what was happening was that we were actually selling more product through the call center. So, some people weren't getting credit for that, but then, that creates other challenges for the organization, because now you have to make sure that you have your call centers prepared to handle that influx of phone calls. So I think it's, like I said, it's a challenge, but it's a tremendous opportunity for everyone here to figure out how to solve for it.
Do you think that mobile can be a place for brand marketing?
Absolutely. I think the fact that as we closed 2013, mobile internet traffic started to surpass desktop internet traffic. And obviously that's additive. That means that that's where your customer is constantly. And so from a targeting standpoint, where you need to be, you have to figure out how to make mobile down to creating those experiences, creating content that enable your customer to have a better experience with your brand. And also to make sure that you're placing value for them in that ecosystem. We've done a lot of testing in that area. I think second screen and some of the stuff that Twitter's doing is really interesting, and with their TV targeting product, which we've seen some success with. And we've actually done some work for IBM using, this is an older example, but in the 2012 US Open, we did a program where you were able to Shazam the live broadcast to actually download real-time stats on the tennis matches. And it was all built around showing how IBM works with big data. So in many ways, that was a brand effort that we were undertaking.
So is Twitter TV ad targeting, and has that been successful?
Yeah, I think it's definitely, we've had some mixed results, but I would say by and large, it's been successful. I think the interesting thing is that it depends on the audience you're targeting, right? I think it's not going to work for every category. Twitter released some stats today that showed the diversity of their audience, and I think, which is very interesting. It was actually, I think, front page of the Journal today, where, and it's actually not just Twitter, across all social networks, a much more diverse audience using it. So that presents a lot of opportunity, again, for marketers. And the way that the Twitter TV targeting works really is a supplement to what you're already doing from a marketing standpoint. And it's an amplifier of that.
So what audiences do you think you can effectively reach with it?
Yeah, I think, again, it's going to depend. There's definitely a youthful audience that you can reach there, a diverse audience, probably a little bit more on the consumer side, but we've had some success in financial services. If you're doing promotions that involve sports and you have sponsorships, it can be good to kind of sync up your Twitter targeting with those events. So I think that's sort of the mix that's working right now.
What about Snapchat? Would you advise brands to test marketing programs there? There's no ads there yet, of course,
right.
But some like Wet Seal and Taco Bell are kind of dipping a toe in the water.
Yeah, I think, with a lot of those, going back to those newer platforms, again, if there's an audience, we have all these micro audiences that are using applications for different purposes.